Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my FXmovies.20 channel? Thank you so much. I awoke feeling lethargic. My thoughts remained foggy from slumber. Upon exiting the bedroom, I discerned muffled sounds emanating from the living room. My spouse was absent on a fishing expedition. I deduced that my 20-year-old stepson was likely awake and watching television early in the morning. I was mistaken. Upon rounding the corner, I was immobilized by astonishment. My stepson and his girlfriend were seated on our couch, exposed as at birth. They were evidently engaged in highly personal actions. I remained immobilized, unable to avert my gaze from the entangled limbs before me. Suddenly, the girlfriend observed my presence. Rather uncomfortable, she grinned and gestured for me to approach with an insinuating wink. "Why not accompany us?" she emitted a purring sound. "The greater the number, the more enjoyable the experience." My heart accelerated, and I experienced a flush of embarrassment on my cheeks. This was profoundly erroneous on multiple levels. Silently, I pivoted on my heel and retreated to the sanctuary of my bedroom, forcefully closing the door behind me. As I leaned against the closed door, attempting to regain my breath, I became cognizant of an unusual tingling feeling permeating my body. My skin felt charged, excessively sensitive, and strange pain resided deep within my center. To my dismay, I recognized my arousal. The forbidden scene I had observed had ignited a deep urge within me. Uninvited visions surged through my consciousness, contemplating the sensation of uniting with them, to succumb to temptation and allow myself to be engulfed by want and indulgence. I vigorously shook my head, endeavoring to eradicate those illicit notions. This was my stepson, for heaven's sake. I was contentedly married. I could not, nor would I, accept such wicked thoughts. Nevertheless, a faint voice in the recesses of my mind murmured, "Why not?" My spouse was absent. No one would ever need to be informed. When would I get another opportunity to engage in such an exhilarating fantasy? My quivering hand descended along my body involuntarily. I was astonished to discover myself already drenched in want. With a few caresses, I approached the brink of bliss. Guilt and shame clashed with lust and curiosity. I remained immobilized, my body clamoring for liberation while my head shrank back in dread. What sort of perverted individual was I to entertain this notion? At that point, I was genuinely uncertain about my course of action. Every fiber of my existence was tugged in conflicting directions. The temptation was insurmountable, jeopardizing the supremacy of reason and morality. I descended to the floor, positioned my back against the door, and concealed my face in my hands. How did this occur? How had a single glimpse of forbidden fruit changed my entire existence? I took satisfaction in being a commendable wife and an exemplary stepmother. Nevertheless, I found myself in this situation, deliberately considering transgressing a boundary. That cannot be reverted. A portion of me desired to return and deliver a reprimand regarding proper conduct to affirm my position as the accountable adult. However, I was aware that encountering them again in a state of fervor would undermine my determination. I remained immobilized, conflicting desires and aversions within me. I was unaware of the duration for which I remained immobilized in that position. Minutes, hours. Time seemed to become devoid of significance. Ultimately, I perceived the front door open and shut. Suppressed laughter resonated along the corridor. Thereafter, it diminished. They must have departed. I exhaled a trembling breath. I was unaware that I had been restraining. The enchantment was dispelled. Rationality gradually re-emerged, dispelling the haze of desire that had obscured my thoughts. What had I been contemplating? How could I have contemplated such thoughts? Nonetheless, briefly, feelings of shame and self-loathing inundated me in successive waves. I am uncertain how I will ever face my stepson again or his partner. The recollection of my observations and my responses will be eternally imprinted in my mind. I recognize the necessity of engaging in a serious discussion with children regarding limits and acceptable conduct in communal areas. How can I admonish them on morality when my own views are so tainted? This incident has profoundly unsettled me and prompted a re-evaluation of my self-perception. I have consistently seen myself as a principled individual with robust ideals. In that moment of temptation, I nearly discarded everything. I'm left contemplating. Am I indeed this person at my core? Or was it really a transient lapse induced by shock and astonishment? Regardless, I am aware that I can never disclose this to anyone. I must bear this concealed humiliation until my death. I will now take an extended cold shower to alleviate the residual symptoms. I shall endeavor to act as though this incident never occurred, to revert to the esteemed role of wife and stepmother that I am expected to fulfill. However, I am aware that fundamentally, a portion of me will perpetually contemplate what if. Furthermore, I am uncertain if I will ever completely regain trust in myself. I endeavored to suppress the disturbing morning from my thoughts and resume my usual routine. However, as I shut my eyes, those illicit pictures would surge through my thoughts, eliciting a tingling sensation along my spine. Monday arrived, and I urgently required my caffeine boost to confront the work week. I proceeded to my customary coffee establishment, hoping that the established routine would provide stability. While I awaited my turn in line, I sensed a tap on my shoulder. My stomach sank upon turning to see my stepson's girlfriend smiling at me. Among all the individuals to encounter greetings, she exclaimed, behaving as though nothing unusual had occurred. "What a surprise to encounter you here." I uttered an uncomfortable hello, aiding that she would perceive the implication and refrain from engaging with me. No such luck. She inclined toward him, her voice subdued. "Regarding the other day, I trust we did not cause you any discomfort?" I experienced a warm glow on my cheeks. "Look, I'd really rather not discuss." "No, please listen to me," she interrupted. "I saw the way you stared at us, the yearning in your eyes." My mouth went dry. Had I really been that obvious? She continued, her tone sultry. "It's nothing to be ashamed of. We all have desires, right? Forbidden desires we're reluctant to reveal, even to ourselves." I shook my head vehemently. "You got it all wrong. I was just astonished, that's all." She laughed softly. "Sure, keep telling yourself that, but we both know the truth." I glanced around uneasily, scared someone could overhear. "Please, can we not do this here?" "Very well," she replied with a shrug. "Please be informed that I will be at your residence this weekend during your husband's absence. Your stepson and I are organizing a quite intimate gathering." My pulse quickened at her suggestion. "That is indeed inappropriate." She smiled with playful malice. "Perhaps not, but it is certainly enjoyable if you are in the vicinity," she insinuated, her thoughts ambiguous. "Certainly not," I retorted. "Your loss," she said with a wink. "The offer remains available, even if your intention is merely to observe. There is no obligation to engage." Consequently, she departed leisurely, leaving me quaking and agitated. I scarcely acknowledged placing my coffee order. My thoughts were in disarray. Upon exiting the shop, her words reverberated in my mind. The allure of succumbing to my deepest curiosities seemed insurmountable. However, I refrained, or could I? I remained in a stupor for the remainder of the day, conflicted by yearning and repulsion. Every logical aspect of my being recognized the necessity to terminate this quickly, instruct my husband to expel both individuals. Nevertheless, a faint voice murmured, "What is the detriment in merely observing? No one would ever need to be informed." I endeavored to concentrate on my work, engaged in errand-seeking distractions, yet my treacherous imagination persistently imagined vivid scenarios of potential occurrences that weekend. Upon arriving home that evening, I was a bundle of nerves. My stepson greeted me nonchalantly as if everything was normal. Was he aware of his girlfriend's suggestion? Was he complicit in it? Was she operating independently? I withdrew to my chamber, overcome by shame and perplexity. I recognized the necessity of confronting both of them to establish regulations. However, a self-serving aspect of me was reluctant to relinquish the prospect, regardless of how distant. As I restlessly shifted throughout the night, unable to slumber, I recognized that I was at a pivotal juncture. The decision I made would delineate my true identity: a steadfast wife who adhered to her convictions or a servant to primal urges. I had to jeopardize everything for a fleeting moment of illicit gratification. I wish I could assert that the decision was straightforward. I promptly opted for the moral high ground. However, the reality is that I remain indecisive, continuing to grapple with an internal conflict between my understanding of righteousness and my clandestine desires. This weekend approaches like an examination whose outcome I doubt. Regardless of the outcome, nothing will return to its previous state. Upon the arrival of the weekend, I discovered that I was home alone with my stepson. A dense fog of stress enveloped the house while I occupied myself with housework, endeavoring to disregard the persistent fluttering in my abdomen. Each time I heard my stepson move about downstairs, my heart would accelerate. Was today the designated day? Would she arrive at approximately noon? The doorbell sounded. My hands became immobilized while folding laundry, my heart racing into my throat. She was present. I perceived muted salutations and laughter emanating from below. Resisting the temptation to glance, I withdrew to my chamber, resolute in avoiding their presence. I endeavored to occupy myself with a book. However, the words were indistinct before my vision. Each creak of the floorboards, each eruption of laughter heightened my anxiety. As time progressed, my curiosity became insatiable. What activities were they engaged in down there? A brief glance would surely be harmless to ensure they were not engaging in any inappropriate behavior in the communal areas. Before I could rationalize my decision, I found myself descending the steps stealthily. My unshod feet were silent on the carpet. I halted at the base, auditory tension filling the air. Gentle music emanated from the living room, interrupted by subdued laughter and sporadic gasps. After inhaling deeply, I advanced cautiously, glancing around the corner. The spectacle before me rendered me breathless. They were present, partially disrobed on the couch. Sunlight illuminated the interior through the windows, immersing their intertwined forms in a golden luminescence. My stepson was shirtless. His girlfriend's blouse was unbuttoned. I recognized the necessity to depart, to return upstairs and disregard what I had seen. However, my feet remained immobile. I stayed there, captivated as they descended further into the cushions. My eyes opened as I observed them explore one another with enthusiastic hands and mouths. The atmosphere appeared to shimmer with electrical energy. I experienced a recognizable warmth permeating my body. My skin tingled with every illicit touch. I observed their gentle groans and murmured affections permeating the atmosphere. I found myself inclining nearer, immersing myself in every aspect, the contour of her back as she arched towards him. Tom appeared to become irrelevant as I remained in that position, a discreet observer of their private encounter. My thoughts were tumultuous with contradictory feelings. Shame for my trespass, elation at the prohibited spectacle before me, remorse for violating my husband's trust. However, dominating everything was a primal hunger I had never encountered previously. My body resonated with want, each nerve ending heightened in yearning for contact. Suddenly, his girlfriend's gaze shifted towards me. My heart ceased to beat, hemoglobin solidifying within my circulatory system. This was the moment I would be revealed as the depraved stepmother I had become. Rather than confronting me, she merely offered a furtive wink. Subsequently, to my complete astonishment, she proceeded to amplify her performance. She arched her back dramatically, emitting exaggerated cries of delight. It felt as though she was performing exclusively for me, extending an invitation to me, challenging me to participate. My stepson, unaware of my presence, reacted enthusiastically to her heightened excitement. Their fervor escalated as I saw, immobilized. My dermis had a tingling sensation. Each nerve ending pulsated with an urgent, profound need. I am uncertain about the duration of my presence there, imbibing in the prescribed view. Time seems to become entirely devoid of significance. My hands were tightly clasped at my sides, fingers pressing into my palms as I resisted the impulse to caress myself, to affiliate with him. His girlfriend persistently cast me furtive glances, her eyes twinkling with malice. She then altered their stance, providing me with a more unobstructed view of their intertwined forms. The logical segment of my mind urged me to depart, to ascend the stairs and erase this occurrence from memory. However, I was immobilized, unable to divert my gaze from the sensual scene before me. The trance was only broken when they collapsed together in a tangle of limbs. Reality abruptly reasserted itself, prompting me to ascend the steps as silently as possible, hoping my stepson remained unaware of my presence. I secured myself in the bathroom, applying cool water to my flushed face. My reflection gazed back at me, eyes ardent with want and perplexity. What have I become? As I descended to the floor, my body resonating with unquenched want, I realized that circumstances would irrevocably change. I had transgressed a boundary that could not be retracted. The image of what I had observed would be permanently etched in my memory. The knowledge of my enjoyment and my near participation profoundly unsettled me. I am uncertain about our next steps, how I will confront my stepson or his girlfriend in broad daylight, how I will meet my husband's gaze upon his return. I have roused an aspect of myself that cannot be subdued, an insatiable thirst. I am both apprehensive and delighted by the implications for my future. Upon hearing their movements below, undoubtedly engaged in tidying up, I saw that this was merely the inception. His girlfriend was aware that I had been observing. She had fostered it. What will her subsequent act be? To what extent was I prepared to allow this to continue?